All right, I'd like to call to order the May 24th URA budget meeting. And first order of business, first of all, if you're connecting remotely with us, please be sure that your microphone is muted and your video is turned off for bandwidth issues, please. Same to everyone here in the room, phones on mute. And at this point in time, we need to have nominations for chair.
Do we need a roll call first, Gary?
Oh, we do, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Board Member Litz?
Here.
Board Member Cobb? Board Member Blum?
Here.
Board Member Moyer? Board Member Frieden?
Here.
Board Member Ross?
Here.
Board Member Smith?
Here.
Board Member Conley?
Here.
And I see Board Member Cobb entering the room.
All right.
All right, now, since we got that little bit of business out of the way, we'll call for nominations of a chair.
I move to nominate Ross as the URA Budget Committee Chair. I second.
All those in favor of the motion that's been presented to railroad me into chair again, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Nay. All right, at this point in time, we're moving on to the budget message. Dr. Misley.
All right, great. Thanks, Chair Ross. I'm not going to read this word for word. I'm going to hit some high notes on each of the next handful of pages. So we're on page 77, first page of the budget message for the proposed District Urban Renewal Agency budget for fiscal year 22-23. A little reminder, back in the fall of 2020, after quite a bit of work leading up to that, the City Council and the Urban Renewal Agency Board, which is comprised of the City Council members, made some significant amendments to the Urban Renewal Agency plan and project list. And so the most notable components of that was that the duration, the expiration of the URA was extended from June 30th, 2023 to June 30th of 2030. And gosh, it didn't feel like June 30th of 2023 would sneak up that fast, but it sure did. And in terms of giving ourselves the ability to leverage millions of dollars of funds through the URA, extending that out to 2030 was critical. The second component was actually settling on an amount of maximum indebtedness that the URA would factor into the revised project list. And again, based on the extension to 2030 and calculations that go into debt service and existing maximum indebtedness that had been previously spent, $4.7 million was the new amount that was factored into the updated project list. We'll get to the project list here in a little bit. So those are important factors of positioning ourselves to where we are today, but more importantly, where we're going over the next few years or handful of years. This current fiscal year, the most notable thing that happened, and again, we didn't even budget the funds because we didn't know if it would happen for sure or not, is that we were able to acquire the East Portal property from the Forest Service just in the last couple of months, finalizing those documents. So that purchase price of $675,000, the majority of that and the majority of the land of the property itself is within the Urban Renewal Agency, and we had strategically allocated funds for a downtown amenity, and we put $550,000 of urban renewal funds towards that, and then $125,000 of general fund towards that. And stop me along the way, please, but I'll note when we're flipping pages and whatnot. So for this proposed fiscal year, we don't have any, again, with a lot of projects up in motion, you know, Locust 20, affordable housing, et cetera. We're not budgeting to expend a lot of funds. And furthermore, the funds we did have, the cash on hand we did have, most of that was spent on the East Portal acquisition. So again, we have this maximum indebtedness, this credit line, so to speak, that we can access, but we don't have that cash on hand. And we're bringing in increment property tax revenue every year to the tune of, you know, a few $100,000 or projecting slightly over $400,000 for this next year. But that only gets you so far if you're talking about multi-million-dollar projects. So for this year, really the crux of this proposed budget and our activity is to budget $75,000 and pursue a bond to access most or all of that remaining maximum indebtedness. So moving through that process this fall, this winter, into next spring, so that when we're having these conversations next year, we might already actually have cash on hand, or we'll at least have a timeline of when we'll be bringing that cash on hand to the Urban Renewal Agency to then be able to budget for expenditure towards projects, hopefully in fiscal year 23-24 and beyond. So that's the expenditure for this year is really staff time and consultant time to access and leverage those funds. In the budget message and the council goals for the city budget did allude to the funds, the URA funds, to go towards hardening downtown commercial buildings. So those dollars are still set aside in this budget as well. So on page 78, there's a list revised at the beginning of this calendar year of the project list, and what it's showing is us shifting funds into the property acquisition for East Portal, increasing that from $300,000 to $675,000, and then the proportional share of the urban renewal cost from $150 to $550, and then reducing other sections to offset moving those funds. So the bottom line, the 4.7 million didn't change. We just shifted within the project list, and that's totally normal for urban renewal agencies and projects and opportunities to come along and make revisions as you go. So a couple notable pieces, and you heard from Paul as it relates to the street fund earlier. Completing 100% engineering and design for the Adams Avenue streetscape this year. We just wrapped that up in the last couple months. So we've got that primed and ready to go. But again, need to be strategic about costs. I'm going to be a little bit off, but our original cost estimate, I think it doubled, if not 2.5x maybe, for what we were looking at for that project. So, if you're looking at a $2 million project that's now a $4 million project, and 50% contribution from URA that was $1 million, that's now $2 million, that's going to make you pause and think about, okay, how do we strategically move forward on that? Anyway, the plan's complete. That was a big step, and we're well positioned moving forward there. So page 79, at the top, like mentioned, rolling over that creation of the retrofit of downtown commercial buildings for wildfire resiliency, and then exploring keeping the flexibility of leveraging URA funds for strategic purposes, like we did for East Portal, keeping that at the forefront as we head into next fiscal year. But really, these objectives that you see for the 22-23 work plan and the budget are, as I mentioned, that bond funding strategy, positioning ourselves to the extent possible for funding strategy for Adams Avenue, and then that wildfire resiliency program. Any questions on any of that? I'm going to skip the URA overview and the assessed value property tax information. Joe and I revised this table on page 80 of the URA project history and expense summary, but felt it was just a good snapshot to give you a feel for URA expenditures over the last 15 years or so.
Mostly good ideas.
No comment. And then flipping the page to 81, this top table here, just showing, and again, there's really a couple main reasons that are pretty straightforward, showing why the tax increment that goes to fund the urban renewal agency has increased so significantly over the last decade. Property values had dropped significantly in post-Great Recession through the early 2010s. And then when you had property values start to climb back up, as well as any new construction in the urban renewal agency, those are really the two factors driving that increase. So all those funds go to support the urban renewal agency projects through the project fund, or eventually down the road and potentially even beyond 2030, financing debt that the URA will take on. Any questions on that component? Okay. So just to summarize, urban renewal agency is a strategic tool for sure. I think we've been mindful of using that tool, not abusing that tool, but really putting ourselves in a position to have that supplement city funds, grant funds, and key priority projects. So we're not trying to, take our top 10 projects and add 10 more URA projects. We're trying to take the URA and leverage that to get our top 10 projects done, right? And they're big ticket items that impact either specifically in downtown Sisters or, variables like traffic flowing through downtown Sisters, right? So there's a direct connection there. The East Portal acquisition was a big step, great utilization of those funds. And then the discussion that we'll be having, the URA board in particular, but then this group next spring around the bond funding and getting that maximum indebtedness, that'll really be the big conversation piece over the next 12 months from staff's perspective. So any questions as we flip to, well, Joe, I could let you talk about, I guess it would just be, we'll stick with the agenda. How about that? That's when in doubt. I always forget that. Remind myself.
I had one question on page 80.
Yeah, please.
Just that time, the historical timeline.
Yep.
So the East Portal's not on there. Is that because that's really going to hit in 23, or is that because the money?
It probably should be on there.
Yeah, that's more historical. It doesn't really have the projection in there, I guess, like a lot of our other tables do, but definitely we could add it in there.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the funds probably will clear by June 30, but we haven't transferred funds yet, right? We're heading into escrow, I guess, technically. So
Well, just looked a little dry there for a few years, so I thought maybe we should
Yeah.
make sure we put that in there.
Just trying to help us out.
Been doing stuff.
Try to counterbalance the administrative fees.
That's right.
Yeah.
No offense.
And I didn't mean to blitz through the project list or the plan amendments or anything like that. So if there are any questions on any of that, or the URA overview in general, if there are any questions there, just feel free to ask. No stupid questions. It's a good time.
It's a complicated concept, and so I'm happy to see the institutional knowledge, education of staff and council is listed in here. Just to keep it in the forefront of people's mind about how it operates and the boundaries that we're operating in using those funds.
Yeah, and to that point, not that we'd expended a lot of funds, but we had spent some funds in the last 2 fiscal years for sure, maybe 3, on Elaine Howard Consulting, who we brought on to help advise the URA through the project list update and through some other revisions, ordinances and legalities that we've navigated, but we're not expecting necessarily to need her services at all in this coming fiscal year. It'll really be even more specialized with the bond council.
I have a quick question, if you wouldn't mind giving me the elementary school level version. What's the method of changing URA boundaries to possibly make it a little larger to capture the area, new area?
Yeah, so it's not not an easy process necessarily. I believe that the Urban Renewal Board could make a 1% revision to the URA boundaries without going out to the taxing districts and getting their approval. But if you're making a revision larger than that, I believe you have to go and get approval from all the taxing districts.
And so essentially it's a strategic process, it's not a quick process or anything like that. It's a very strategic and deliberate process.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you would want to have a very good reason
Okay.
to do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions of Corey? We ready to move forward?
I think we are.
First of all, do we have anyone here to make public comment, Carrie? All right, thank you very much. Director O'Neill.
Thank you. So let's jump ahead to page 86 for the Urban Renewal Debt Service Fund. So for those of you who don't know, the Urban Renewal Agency has two different funds. One of them is the Debt Service Fund, and one of them is the Project Fund. The first one here, the Debt Service Fund, its sole obligation is to pay debt. And last year, as I said earlier, the debt to First Interstate Bank was paid in full. We paid that in February. And then the Urban Renewal Debt Fund was also associated with transferring its balance to the Project Fund. City Council has heard this before. But in order to get money to the Project Fund from the Debt Fund, the city, separate organization, needed to transfer money to the Urban Renewal Project Fund, creating debt. And then the Urban Renewal Debt Fund paid the city for that debt. So it's basically a wash, but that's the process that has to go through kind of the shell game, if you will, to kind of transfer fund balance, because following the conditions of the state, this is not allowed to be done directly.
I think that graphic should make its way into the budget book.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
Carrie,
I'm
yes.
a little,
That could be the pop-up book.
it's not that I don't like hearing, yeah, that would be awesome. I don't like, 3D. It's not that I don't like hearing you explain it.
Yeah.
So I don't take
Yeah,
it
where's the
personally.
graphic?
It's just
The
the
graphic
graphic
is better.
is nice, yeah.
Understood. Excuse me. So with that being said, this year, to Corey's point, we're expected to kind of stay idle for debt service unless an opportunity comes up where we need to do this rapid transfer again like we did this year. But we will likely not be paying any debt service for the next fiscal year. We'll just accumulate increment.
Questions?
Questions about not moving any money whatsoever?
Any question on the fund summary? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to the project fund.
All right. Page 88. Down there. It does that with the darn map. Sorry, let me get a better shot here.
Oh, that looks good.
And Joe, I almost feel like you can see it better on 89. I mean, just because it's small enough to be able to,
Oh,
you
sure.
can just see under expenditures, under materials and services, you can see the 4 line items that add up to the 144,
Yep.
5.
Yeah, let me just chew this up real fast here. The map is so big that it throws off the view.
Oh.
Stalling. I think it's
There we go.
that. Okay. So Urban Renewal Project Fund. We've talked about this a couple times already. The goals that we have next year will be to solidify and continue to figure out the process of acquiring this debt, the maximum indebtedness, whether that be public offering, private offering, whatever recommended steps that will include. So we have a little bit of interest here. No, a lot of activity. Administrative services. This $15,000 down here. That is basically the URA paying the city for the personal services that's required to administer the fund. A little bit of auditing services and a little bit of technical assistance and contracted services for those things that Corey talked about in the budget message. So
for that administrative services section, I mean, probably not in smaller communities, but I've seen it in some, but certainly in larger communities that have urban renewal agencies, a lot of times they have dedicated staff, a dedicated executive director or project managers or whatever it might be. So what we've tried to do, it's not perfect, but we've tried to capture staff's time, indirect staff time, or I should say direct staff time that's gone towards urban renewal and allocate that accordingly. So that your general fund or your water sewer fund or whatever it might be isn't paying for all the staff time that's getting put into the urban renewal agency. Again, not perfect science, but just something to consider. And then what I alluded to earlier of having key URA projects also be key city projects, it means that we're not having to pay staff to do project management and leadership and oversight on other projects. So you're gaining a little bit of value, I guess, by having that overlap, which again, in small communities is typical.
Do we have questions of either Corey or Joe on the project fund? Hearing none, it appears that we are at the end of the budget sheets, so I would entertain a motion at this time.
I move the budget committee approve property taxes for fiscal year 2022-23 for the Sisters Urban Renewal Agency to be derived through the division of tax in the amount of $415,000.
Do I have a second?
I second.
You can decide who got there first, Carrie. All right, any discussion on the motion? If not, let's go ahead. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
I move the budget committee, the Sisters Urban Renewal Agency, approve the budget for fiscal year 2022-23 in the amount of $716,906.
Wait,
Oh,
I had a question further in the book,
And that's,
page 103.
how about we,
I don't know where else I would address it.
okay, let's get through the motions and all.
Okay,
Do I have a second?
second.
It's been moved to seconded. The motion, all those in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. And now we have a question from
Sorry.
member Conley.
Page 103, item B, the city council shall create a liaison to the finance department. I thought we got rid of that a couple years ago, maybe when Chuck Ryan was involved.
So
Yes, no?
Joe and I talked about that. I don't know if we had a chance to I don't know if you had a chance to research that or not, but I believe my recollection was that we did not establish a specific liaison. I mean, council at the beginning of each calendar year will say, you know, you're the liaison to the Parks Board, or you're the liaison to, we added law enforcement, we added tourism. But I believe what we decided to do, I think you all and we collectively decided to do, is to really say, well, every council member can be a liaison to staff in the finance department and is involved in this budget process. So we don't have a council member who's a liaison, it's really all of you. And so, yeah, we should clarify that language, because I think at one point it was that way, and then there was a slight change.
So all I have to do is take out create a.
Yeah, there you go.
Shall be,
yeah.
City council is a liaison to, yeah.
Shall be a. I remember that conversation.
No, you just say city council shall liaison.
Or do
Yeah,
we
we'll
even
update it.
need that there needs to be a liaison?
Another Easter egg for you.
I like to put a whereas in there first, you know.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions of staff? Any comments anyone needs to make?
Good
Good
process.
job.
Yep, I think I would like to just thank our citizen members and my fellow city council members. This has been a good process, moved right along. Anytime you can do this in the amount of time we have to still have it be transparent and clear is a sign of good work on the part of staff and good work on the part of everyone here in reviewing the budget on their own time. So with that in mind, I adjourn. Nope. Oh, I didn't see your hand. Well, there you see, that's it. I'm gonna give you a pen light. You can shine in my eye.
Well, I could get one of those orange flags out there. I just wanted to comment that this was a great process, a great book. I wished I'd had more time. So next year, if we can not have the council meeting and the budget meeting in the same week, or get the budget book out a week earlier, because I wasn't able to go through it with a fine tooth comb and make all my little notes about, you know, this sentence could have been rewritten.
It's
because
not
I
too
just
late.
didn't have time.
Not too late for
It's
that.
not too late.
But you're right.
Now I'm not interested anymore. And I also want to say that when coming on council, one of the things that I hoped to be able to do was to bring to the budgeting process my own philosophy in life, which is if you have goals that you need to reach and that you aspire to, that you need to save to meet those goals, not go out and create debt, because so much of our funding ends up being paid in debt that I think the city has historically been very smart in its ability to hold off and save and use SDCs and whatever tools we have of grants to be able to move forward in this community in such a wonderful way for such a small community, because we have done that. The tax money that we get, the revenue that we get is spent very, very wisely and not on interest. And I just want to bring that home. That's it.
Thank you, good point.
Further comments? Since I ignored everybody except me?
I am, Terry, do you need our notes, or is this?
If you have written anywhere in your notes, you can keep them yourself if you want to keep them for 5 years, or you can turn them over to me and I'll keep them for 5 years. Your choice.
Any other questions? All right, with no further objections, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you all.
Everyone.
Thank you.